John Scott, Vic Carucci here, and day 2 of the NFL draft kind of playing out, Vic, like your crystal ball seemed to say. First off, we said, hey, don't be surprised if Brandon Beane doesn't sit on his hands like night number 1, moves up, grabs an elusive third-round pick. Boom, he did it. 15 spots up and drafts South Carolina defensive tackle TJ Sanders. Part of that trade up also meant trading down into the 3rd round, which are Arkansas edge rusher Landon Jackson, a guy I think we've earmarked for months now. And from hearing from Jackson, it seems like he felt the Bills did the same thing right there. Right. Let's go with number 1, the move to trade up 15 spots and ultimately select Sanders out of South Carolina.
15 spots is a big jump, even if it's not in the 1st round. In this case, the 2nd round. It's movement, and now they got a 3rd round pick out of it, which I think is probably the best part of this deal. But I don't want to minimize the player they acquired, because a 2nd round pick should be someone who's delivering for you right away, and the Bills, I think, expect that from Sanders. Now, he is big, but not a behemoth. And when I say big, he weighed in at the combine at 297 pounds. He's said that he's gained somewhere between 3 and 8 pounds since then, whatever that is, but still in that low 300 range. And look, it's not just about what tips on the scale. It's about power player. He's not that. He's a finesse player. He's a guy that penetrates to get to the quarterback. What would be described as a 3 technique, and Brandon Beane said that's the role he's going to play as a rookie. He said maybe he'll have some 1 technique, which is more of that power guy, that nose tackle type of player. But I really wonder and question, is that the person that you need on a defense that doesn't really have that overpowering, overwhelming ability? At least we haven't seen it for most of the time that Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane have been in charge of this team.
So you're moving up 15 spots. You're picking them high, middle portion of the 2nd round. And with Ed Oliver, a big contract, a former top 10 pick, even with a heavy rotation at the defensive front, when it's crunch time, TJ Sanders is not going to be on the field over Ed Oliver, and I think as much as there are not glaring holes on this Bills defense, with an investment like that, you'd at least like to see a clearer path to more regular playing time to be impactful.
Yeah, and it sounds like, and you heard Brandon Beane say this too, that physical development could be there, that Sanders reached that ceiling, and I'm thinking he's referencing the body. Can he put on more comfortable weight? Sanders again brought up weight when he said, maybe I can get the 310 and be comfortable there. It's always a little dicey when you start hearing players have reference to their body weight. Now, you remember when A.J. Epinesa came aboard with the Bills. And Boogie Basham. And the discussion was how they could get maybe bigger, or once in the case of Epinesa, it was going big and then going small, and he's still just sort of an average level player, not a dominant guy on the D-line. So we'll see how this works out with Sanders. But they saw something, and there's a lot to like. Let's not try to say that this guy doesn't bring something. The high motor, instincts, intelligence, all of those things that Brandon Beane mentioned do check boxes, but do they check enough?
Vicious hands is another one that I've seen in terms of length, things like that. But again, and we're not saying the Bills have to have a 335-pound just guy in there. Right. Listen, don't force it. You'd rather have good football players rather than just a big body type, and they maybe still could address that in day 3 of the draft here. Landon Jackson, though, is a guy that, again, he just seemed destined to be on this organization, and it hit me at the NFL Combine just listening to him. It kind of grabbed you back in. I don't know about you tonight, hearing him on a Zoom. As you said, you just listen to him for a few minutes, and it's like, just even from a personality standpoint, that's a Buffalo Bill.
No doubt. And a Sean McDermott level, this coaching staff, this organization level type of player. If you're drawing up the perfect profile of what they want, he is that guy. And you could see it, like you mentioned, in the interview in the Combine. You look at his profile as a player, as a man. Married, talked about the wife and dog to go home to, and it's all about football otherwise. So yeah, these are the things that I think I know that Sean McDermott admires, that the Bills place a very high priority on. Now, what kind of player is he? He doesn't have some natural body lean. He plays a little high, as the scouts like to say, but there are things that can be developed in him that this team sees that can make him effective. I like the fact that he used as the comp, as the guy that he would perhaps like to become in the NFL, as Max Crosby. That's a very ambitious goal, but I think that would be something Bills fans would say, hey, if he could become anything close to that, that would be welcome.
He also said Jason Taylor, who's obviously a Hall of Famer, but someone that Bills fans very much well aware of with his time with the Miami Dolphins here. And in terms of his maybe lack of bend and some of the dings on him, he was open about it in the call, and he said even the Bills were open in their regular conversations saying, hey, you may not have this, but one thing you do have is you're 6'7", you're 270 pounds, and some of the things you may not have right now, we can teach you. We've also seen that philosophy rather frequently. They like traitsy guys that maybe aren't as refined, and there are certainly warts that they believe their coaching staff can kind of wear down and develop them. It hasn't always worked, though, and that's maybe the scary part.
And John, that's the thing when you're drafting. Couple of issues to look at here. When you're drafting low, what's the plus of that? You're winning. You're winning enough games to be drafting low. Okay, that's A. But B, I think as an organization or as an organizational philosophy, you can have desirable qualities, and in the case of the Bills, you try to put a high premium on character, on the good guy or the guy that's going to be available to you because he's say not getting in trouble off the field. And I think when you're doing that, you might be sacrificing other things. So if you're picking lower, and when you're low in the first round, and then in general lower in the draft on rounds, it doesn't mean you can't find a great player or a Hall of Famer or somebody spectacular. But the likelihood is coming into it, you're going to see things on a list that might even equal the number of negatives that equal the number of positives, or even more than some of the positives. But then you say, we'll fix them.
The additions to the defensive line, I think, are really going to make training camp fascinating as we go along, because now you have 5 defensive ends in the Joey Bosa, Greg Rousseau, A.J. Epinesa, Landon Jackson, and Javon Solomon on top of Michael Hoyt when he comes back from his suspension,
right,
and the defensive linemen on the interior. It's a really, you talk about a breeding competition, that's going to be a hot spot. What do you think just in general? 3 selections, 3 rounds, 3 defensive players for the Bills coming out hot this year in the draft.
It's an agenda to me. This made a statement as to what this team feels it needs to do to get over the hump. Which hump am I talking about? Everyone knows what it is. It's the postseason, okay? They are built already to be a team. Even before this draft, they were a team with a strong enough roster to win in the regular season, as they have been, to win the AFC East, to be a playoff contending team or a Super Bowl contending team. But what are the ingredients that get them over the top? Now, I am not saying that any of the 3 players they've selected so far are transformational, but I do think, and they believe, that these are pieces that can help in terms of depth and maybe that 1 or 2 plays a game that a guy is in there to make a difference by the time they get to that postseason. And they hope, of course, that these 3 players can still be, around healthy enough and around long enough. Maxwell Hairston, the first round draft pick, missed 5 games last year with a shoulder injury. So he's got to prove he can stay healthy. He's got to get a little bigger and stronger, and we'll see how that all works out.
And Beane saying, we wanted and identified getting younger on defense just in general here. All right, 7 picks. Good golly, come on, Beane. You're killing me, Smalls, picking up that 7th. 7 picks still in rounds 4 through 7 here, the last day of the draft. We're not going to go into names because really at this point we're tossing darts and you won't even know who they are. But positions, I honestly just really want to focus on this.
Okay.
Because you've been on this for months now. Running back.
Yeah.
The James Cook situation. Went with Ray Davis a year ago. The probability of running back in general, And truly, how much of a priority should it be in a deep running back class?
Again, after 3 defensive picks, I would have to believe day 3 is going to be very strongly influenced by offensive choices for the Bills. And one of those choices, I think, will absolutely be a running back. I can't tell you which round or who it might be, but this is a draft where not only the Bills, other teams are going to be looking to make those pickups. Running backs are still seen as, it's insulting to say this dime a dozen position, but a position that you can sufficiently address well below the first 2 days of the draft, and sometimes after the draft is over right with an undrafted free agent. So, yes, I see them picking up somebody, whatever round it is. And then, of course, wide receiver is still on the table. I know you want to talk about that. So offense, I think, will be the theme of day 3.
Now, I would say safety and linebacker, 2 other positions on the defensive side that certainly could be in the mix for day 3, beginning at noon on Saturday. Again, rounds 4 through 7, the Bills with 7 selections. Currently, boy, we would really like Brandon Beane to keep wheeling and dealing a little more and get some of them on out of here, especially those 7th and 6th rounders.
Cut those picks.
Get them out of here. Get them out of here. With Vic Carucci, I'm John Scott for Channel 2 Sports.